The Italian Wine Podcast is the community-driven platform for Italian wine geeks around the world. Support the show by donating at ItalianWinePodcast.com. Donate €5 or more and we'll send you a copy of our latest book, My Italian Grape Geek Journal, absolutely free. To get your free copy of My Italian Grape Geek Journal, click Support Us at ItalianWinePodcast.com or wherever you get your pods. Grazie mille. Wine2wine Business Forum is a training and networking event for anyone involved in the wine business. Held in Verona on November 13th and 14th, this year, the forum will involve over 90 international speakers and over 50 sessions on topics ranging from marketing and communication, sustainability, strategy, new market trends, and market focus. In collaboration with the Italian Trade Agency, a number of market-focused sessions will be broadcast in a podcast series on the Italian Wine Podcast, a media partner of the Wine2wine Business Forum.
Hello, everyone. Hello. So Krister, they save the best for last, right?
Thank you.
Yes. But welcome. My name is Åsa Johansson. I'm a Swedish wine journalist based in Tuscany. I write in 5 countries in 3 languages, and I'm a teacher at the School of Sommelier in Sweden, do wine education, and I have started the first podcast about Italian wine in Sweden. And I also have a small production of olive oil that I bottle and label by myself. But if you ask my children what their mother does for a living, they will just say she drinks wine and label things. So that's kind of the thing. Today we're going to try to understand a little bit better the Scandinavian wine market, especially the on-trade. And who could be better to tell us about that than Krister Bengtsson, the founder of Star Wine List, the wine profile of the year in 2018 in Sweden, journalist and entrepreneur, and has in a very short time taken Star Wine List not only outside of Sweden or Scandinavia, but has become a very important international brand. We're going to do an overview over Scandinavia, and then we're going to zoom in more and more. Krister, you will take us on this journey, so I hand over the ball to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Åsa. Thank you for coming. Last slots on the day, so I know you're all friends and family, or becoming that, either part. And it's been an exciting 2 days, so I'm very happy to be here with you as well. I know we said in the program as well a few questions to address. How do the individual markets of Denmark, Sweden, and Norway compare? How do the importers and distributors operate? What's the role of SOMs? And how can Italian producers get on distribution and listings in top Scandinavian restaurants? Saving that for last. So we hopefully can address that today. A little bit about Star Wine List. It's a restaurant guide with wine in focus that we started 6 years ago in Sweden and now in 37 countries, selected by wine professionals, including Åsa, who's created the guide to Tuscany for us, Justina Mercuri in Milan, and other places. So if you're looking for a place to go and drink wine in different cities and countries, check it out on the website and the app. We're going to go through this fairly quick. There's quite a bit of information, so if you want the deck afterwards, just leave me a card and we'll send it, but we'll try and be fast about it. Looking a bit at the big picture on the markets and what's happening. Looking at the wine lists in the top restaurants and wine bars in Scandinavia, and looking at which are the Italian producers that are placed in a lot of them. And also asked a number of SOMs what they're looking for when it comes to Italian wines. We're moving forward a bit. Very basic, Scandinavia. It's Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. 21 million people, approximately. Stockholm and Copenhagen, the big cities. There are differences. Norway is not in the European Union, so different rules apply. All have local currencies called krona, but the Danish krona is actually connected to the euro, so it follows closely, where the others are floating and have dropped compared to the euro. You know about the monopolies in the Nordic countries, but in fact, it's the retail markets in Sweden and Norway that have monopoly stores. Whereas the on-trade, the HoReCa markets, are free and open for importers to import what they want and sell to restaurants whomever they want. And Denmark is super free. That's the free country in the Nordics, where we like to go and enjoy life.
Yeah, they always seem a little bit more happy than we do, don't they?
Yeah, I think that's because of this picture, really. Yeah. You're free, happy with it. Makes a lot of sense. But, you talk about the monopoly markets. And, of course, Finland, which is a Nordic country, but not usually when you talk about Scandinavia. So that's why we left it out of this presentation. That's a monopoly retail as well.
But just one thing, Krister, when you say that the HoReCa channel is free, you still need an importer. You can't sell directly to the restaurants. They have to go through an importer in the different countries.
In Sweden and Norway, yes. But you can there are hundreds and hundreds of importers. A lot of sommeliers start their own small one-person import firm, get a license just because they want to import wine to the restaurant. So that's what I mean, but it's very free in that regard when it comes to the restaurants. And that's also something where, for us in Sweden and Norway, actually the wine bars and restaurants are much more important to us than maybe in other countries, because that's where you go to taste new things and hear stories and learn things from the somms, because you don't get that in shops. If you live in Copenhagen or London, you go to the great wine shops and you learn and you taste. We don't have that with the monopoly, so the restaurants and wine bars are even more important.
Yeah, going to the monopoly store, it always feels like going to the dentist.
Yeah.
Like it's very...
Yes, you worry they're going to pull teeth and not just steal the money from you. A bit of big picture of Sweden. 10% approximately of volumes of wines are sold in restaurants and 90% in the monopolies. Italy is number one when it comes to the market. It's a big producer. When it comes to restaurants, there are large restaurant groups, especially when you go down into chains and everything, but also in good restaurants. Large importers, of course, work with big volumes, and there are large distributors as well with food and wine that have influence. But it's very fragmented and quite free when it comes to small, medium-sized importers, distributors, and restaurants. And there's a lot of choice there in the smaller end. Norway, also Italy, number one supplying country. About 10% there as well, going into the HoReCa. It's outside the European Union. They have their own rules. It's very strict rules for alcohol marketing. And I know one wine bar in Oslo where they even had the local authorities come in and say that they were displaying the wine bottles too much in the wine bar. So it's very strict when it comes to alcohol. Yeah. Same thing here. Large importers work, big volumes. There's quite a bit of consolidation among importers in Norway and the restaurant groups as well, even on the high end in Oslo. Quite a few belong to groups. They're picking up more restaurants. Denmark, the free country. Italy is number one in volume, but actually it dropped to number two in value last year after France. Very fragmented market. Supermarkets are the biggest wine sellers, and they buy direct from Europe, so it's different. You have wine specialty shops, online is big, and HoReCa is about 7% of the market. It's also it's hard to read these numbers sometimes because it's sold on to the rest of the Nordics. I know I was working with wine in London, and there was quite a bit of champagne sold. You saw the bottles that had actually been shipped to Denmark first. So these grey markets going on in that respect. Famously price sensitive, especially in retail. There are always offers going on, and the people complain that people only buy on offers. HoReCa, very fragmented. Of course, natural wine has been a big thing. Copenhagen being the big natural wine city in Europe after Paris, basically, and still important, although it's become more connected to the mainstream, I think, across the Nordics. Talking to importers just before this, hearing what's going on, there are several large importers that work across the Nordic markets, Sweden, Norway, and Finland, because they're good at working with monopolies. There's been quite a bit of movement, consolidation among the importers. There was a merger between Altia and Arcus. Huge players become Anora across the Nordics, and a lot of brands move around there because of that and people. The merger was 2 years ago, but the Stockholm offices are just getting together as we speak. So it's a bit turbulent, as people say, which creates opportunities, of course, when things move around. When it comes to the economy, of course, interest rates have been hitting people and inflation affecting consumers. And we hear that as well. There was a boom after the pandemic that people were, enjoying life, spending more on a bottle of wine. That has clearly come down a bit to normal levels when it comes to price. And we hear that, restaurants say, well, still a lot of people going out, but they're buying a cheaper bottle of wine than last year. Burgundy, which is huge in these markets, is getting pricey and getting out of the reach for by the glass selections, which creates, of course, opportunities for others to come in there. I thought we'd have a look on the Scandinavian wine list, which are the producers that have the most number of listings in our world of top restaurants and wine bars, and including looking at the Italian producers that have done well and are there in those markets right now. And these are in Scandinavia. We have about 500 top wine bars and restaurants on Star Wine list. So that's the universe we're looking at. It's not the lower end. And if we look on Sweden first, the 10 top listed producers in our world in Sweden, actually Champagne, which is huge, in the Swedish wine list. It's a massive part. Burgundy is also huge. And you see 3 Italian producers that are actually among the 10 top listed producers in top wine lists in Sweden. Big names from Italy, of course. And DRC from Burgundy, how does that work? Well, Burgundy is huge in these restaurant markets. We looked at the whole data a few years ago, and about 25% of all the listings in the top restaurants were from Burgundy. DRC has large allocations going out and stick because you don't sell the DRCs every week. They kind of stick on the wine list a bit. So below the top 10, you have a lot of Burgundy producers. If we expand to the top 100 producers going into the Swedish wine list, there are 16 from Italy. And here you see the effect of Piedmont and the grip that Piedmont wines has in this market. Some outliers, Sicily, Foradori, and Tuscany and Invidio Pepe joining that ranking as well. Denmark, classic stuff, Champagne Burgundy, even some Bordeaux, big classic on the wine list. Spain, Pingus, of course, being a Danish producer that started it, and Rheinhessen. And you're thinking, okay, what about all the natural wines coming into Denmark and being the capital in Copenhagen? Where's that? Well, it's outside the top 10. And a lot of the wine bars, for say in Copenhagen, that are hardcore natural, they don't even have wine lists. You have the glass bottles along the wall, so they don't enter, the wine list to have a look at it, basically. A bit fewer Italians entering the top 100 here. Piedmont still strong, Tuscany, Invidio Pepe. And Norway, Burgundy huge. They have some, and this is a complaint from Swedish sommeliers, by the way, that all the good Burgundy goes to Norway because they have good connections there. And you see in the bottom there, an average top Norwegian wine list is very classical. Red Burgundy and German Rieslings are very strong. Interesting to have the Jura there as well. A bit fewer, 8 Italians in the top 100 producers here, with Piedmont leading here as well. Any surprises there, Åsa?
No, I just think that once upon a time, and not very long ago, everything in Scandinavia was about Veneto and Amarone. I remember 10 years ago, you met people who said, I don't drink anything else but Amarone when I go to a restaurant. And now it's all about Piedmont. So how did that shift?
Yeah, there was a shift. And as you say, Veneto, Amarone, and Valpolicella and the Ripassos have been huge. And are still huge in retail, in Monopoly. But the trend and what people are talking about and what's happening now, it's definitely Piedmont. Nebbiolo, Barolo are the keywords for what people are talking about and looking for and buying. We looked at a bit more when we come into the third part.
Yeah, just one question. Yep. And what's the markup in Scandinavian restaurants?
Wine in all the Nordic Scandinavian restaurants, especially Norway and Sweden, is expensive. Especially for the cheaper wines, it's 300-400%. But the expensive stuff can be really good value. So if you're looking for, it's sometimes even a bargain if you travel. And we know we have people traveling in from Asia, etc., just to go drink Burgundy in Norwegian and Swedish restaurants, because you kind of get the trip for free if you're looking for the top end stuff. Whereas if you're looking for house wine and you live in Italy or France, you get a shock when you come to the countryside and buy the glass prices.
And how do you feel, your opinion, you that see so many wine lists through your work, how stable are they? Do they change a lot? Because these that we have seen, they're very classical. So what do you say about that?
When it comes to the listings, yeah.
If you get in, are you going to stay there, or is it rolling?
It depends. I mean, the larger restaurant groups and big restaurants, they usually do a bit of a tenders as well, right, for the big volume by the glass listings and do a deal for that. But they also have a lot of freedom for the sommeliers to choose stuff besides the deals. What's hip can change very quickly, but I think the bigger brands that built up that loyalty and brand both among the guests and the somms, they stick around.
Another question, the buyers at the restaurants or the sommeliers, who are they most influenced by? Is it like wine? Do they read wine magazines, or do they follow the international trends mostly, or do they listen to their customers, or how do you think? What's your opinion?
That's a good question. I think it's a mix. Younger generation, of course, much more social media and other somms, people that are influential that they follow, looking for. Some are even looking for, which are some import firms looking for in other countries as well. You know, if you kind of like an American importer of cool wines in New York, they look for the stuff coming from them. But it's some, you know, also follow their importers. They know, you know, a lot of the smaller import firms, they, you know, hire people from the restaurants, and then you have ex-colleagues and the ones that you trust, and you follow their advice and their trips and their stories. You want to hear what the Soms think, what they're looking for, and their guests. So we asked a number of them that we know a couple of questions to get the views from what's happening now and what they're looking for. And, you know, what are you currently looking for in new Italian listings for your lists? What are the guests asking for? And what advice would you give to an Italian producer looking to go to the Scandinavian market? And we picked out a number of them from different countries that we think are influential. And we start with Petter. If you say Petter to someone in Sweden, Norway, they know exactly who you mean. He's on a first-name basis. He's a rapper. He's 25 years, one of the most successful guys, entrepreneur, podcaster, wine importer, restaurant owner, does a million things. Real Nebbiolo lover, that he says. So his place is called Granen, up in the ski resort in the north, Åre. And you find all these wine lists and information on Star Wines, the app, etc. if you want to check out the wine list afterwards. His work alone and his podcast and everything he does and his hundreds of thousands of followers on social media drives probably 10% of the turnover of Piedmont wines in the world, I think. He's really pushed that hard. On the wine list in the restaurant up north, they have 700 Italian listings, 550 from Piedmont. His ambition is to have every Barolo producer that ever appears is going to be on their wine list. Since he's part of several parts of the trade, his tip, you know, was to be really long-term focused, but also be careful to find an importer that not only works in monopoly. Quite easy for importers in Sweden to be good at working with the monopoly, whereas working in the restaurant, it's much more work. You need to do the tastings and meet the people and be out a lot and have sales people out. Whereas if you're a pro at the monopoly, basically sit in the office and work on Excel and the tenders and have contacts in monopoly. It's a totally different work. Look at what they're doing if you're looking at importers. So that's his tip.
Italian Wine Podcast. Brought to you by Mama Jumbo Shrimp.
Italians, we have quite a few, of course, working. Andrea Consonni from Milan runs a great restaurant in Gothenburg called La Strega. I think this is quite typical. You know, when he's looking for wine, what they're going to list, it's important with the craftsmanship, relationships. I want to meet the winemakers. I want to sell wine to friends, not corporations. This is, of course, something that's strong among many sommeliers as well, to have kind of that connection with people. What are guests asking for? And just like you mentioned, he said, 10 years ago, more people are always asking for Veneto, Ripasso, etc. And now it's only Nebbiolo in the restaurant. It's a northern Italian restaurant, right? Tip for producers, find importers that share your spirit. But also look at your friends' importers or what the importers are carrying. You feel like you fit into that ethos and the group. Be honest. And he also says the guests, and again, are very knowledgeable. I mean, people know a lot about wine, taste a lot of wine, thinking, really high level of knowledge, in his opinion.
Yeah, and there's also a boom in wine education. You can see that all the sommelier educations, and it's really a boom, a great interest in learning, because I don't know if you agree, but I think Scandinavia, and especially Sweden and Norway, they're quite anxious. They're afraid to do something wrong when it comes to wine, so they really want to have like a diploma saying, okay, I know a little bit, so now I can order the wine, since we're not a wine-producing country. Well, we have 100 hectares now, so Not only IKEA, but still, they're very anxious when it comes to wine, my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, you want to follow your neighbors, and that when you get some trend going hard, like the Piedmont wines, it gets very strong movement. This is the restaurant P.M. Vänner. I put it up because it's kind of the wine destination in Sweden. It's in a small town in South Sweden. And you'll see they have a lot of awards in our wine list awards there. Massive wine cellar, 6,000 different wines, a Michelin star, worth the trip. And what they said is among the wine-savvy guests, people who know about wine, Piedmont is big. It also Brunello, and producers with a cult following in regions like Abruzzo, Sicily, and Umbria. For instance, Emilio Pepe that you saw previously, you get that cult image and people want to have it. Whereas average consumers, so to speak, have moved from asking from Ripasso and Amarone to Piedmont, mainly Barolo. And others are just asking for Italian wine. People like Italian wine, just say, I want to have some Italian wine, and are open for that. And they serve a lot of different origins and looking for different regions and types of wines around Italy. People are interested in it, but don't know that much about outside this. And I think also, it's right now November in Sweden. It's super dark and super cold, and that's basically most of the year, except for June.
Congrats.
So yeah, I know why you moved to Tuscany. The big red wines make a lot of sense. You need comfort. You need something big red to warm you up. And it used to be the Veneto wines, and now it's become trendy to do the Barolo wines and Piedmont instead, and Langhe from all that stuff. Tip for them, for producers, traditional, distinctive wine, clear sense of place. For them, it's, they're wine geeks and want to highlight different regions. Another Italian, it's a great restaurant, highly ranked by Gambero Rosso. Typical also that the Italian restaurants want to have all the regions. They're not just following the latest trend. Finding something new besides the classics. Guests here, Barolo, Brunello, super strong, super Tuscans. It says last year was a lot of Sicily, Etna. Also, Scandinavians have great knowledge of wine. Some asked to try things they haven't tried before. And his tip was find a stable importer. It's very competitive. Even though it's a ton of Italian wine, no part of the wine world is easy, right? You need to work hard. He gave an example actually about a Chianti producer that he talked with that had a small importer in Stockholm that shut down, and now the producer has to find a new importer, and finally, people are quite hard to work with and find the right home for it. So that was his tip. We crossed down to the free country, Denmark. Ollie from New Zealand, working the Frank Group. Well, that's a chain, or not a chain, it's a group of really good bistros and wine-focused restaurants. They won the awards there, down to the right, when we did a couple of weeks ago in Copenhagen for the best wine lists. I think this is also something that sommeliers look for. Okay, they need the big regions, Langhe, Tuscan wines, but also outside the big regions, look for stories that guests can relate to. Like Danes love to ski in northern Italy, so it's a Südtirol Dolomite wines. They can sell the story and people recognize the region and connect to that. His opinion also, like about 20% of serious wine lovers look for producers they love and unicorns at decent prices. Many drink red, ask for heavy reds. I think it was interesting, his comment was, Danish market is very fragmented. Select for, what you're looking for to end up. And he also had opinions about the price points, that if you are, that you're perhaps higher priced, then the online sales, etc., is going to be harder if you don't have the name. Whereas if you work with restaurants, they can sell the story and they like to, producers they like. Second part, another non-Danish somm in our collection. I want to show this one because it's a group of 3 plant-based restaurants, vegan restaurants. Arc has a green star from Michelin, won our awards for best sustainable wine list. It's very like a lot of restaurants with focus on sustainability, vegan menus. Of course, farming, cellar work plays a massive part in how they pick wines. And even though it's a lot about the heavy reds, but in fact, a lot of the menus, if you go to good restaurants in the Nordics, plant-based, there's a lot of fish, seafood. On the tasting menus, there's hardly any meat anymore. It's like maybe 1 meat dish out of 8 or 15. So the heavy red has only 1 slot out of like 7 in a tasting menu. And the rest will be white or light reds or orange. Like you said, orange wines, macerated wines from Italy, really food friendly. So that the somms are much more looking for that than the heavy reds. No more pet nut. Come with a good story. Be Turo focused. Jumping up to Norway, not much left in the presentation. Also a massive restaurant. And I think mention here as well that Norwegian seafood, Norway of course being a very fish, sea, close to the sea, lots of oil money to spend. Vermentino, Greco di Tuffo, that's really well. Also here, straight to story traditions, typicity and originality. And of course, it's the gatekeepers, right? The somms are looking for something to pair and share outside what people are already looking for. And this is Karin Deiborn, who runs what I think is probably the best wine bar in the Nordics, Territoriet in Oslo. You need to go there. It's a great place. Have a lot of selection by the glass with Carvin. Very interesting. And what she said, diversity of regions, grapes and styles. And I think what she said is true here, that people are happy with all Italian wines. People love Italy in general. People are still asking for Barbero Nebbiolo from Piedmont, Etna wines, which usually means Sicily. People don't really see the difference between Etna and Sicily if you're a foreigner, and Tuscan Classic, and biodynamic wines that you say people are asking for as well. And a tip for a producer, make the label easy to understand and put the grapes on the label. That'll be first. Going into the end, takeaways. Italian wines, huge in Scandinavia. Come to trends and what people recognize. Piedmont has taken the number one spot, and people talk about Barolo. a lot, and sometimes a bit like they confuse Etna and Sicily for a lot of consumers. Barolo is just another word for Piedmont or Nebbiolo, or it's a big, good red, high-quality wine. Guests, consumers love the big reds, whereas Soms, of course, want to pair it with the food and look for interesting new stories, and regions look for other types of Italian wines. The on-trade markets are very diverse and fragmented, competitive, but there are, look at which ones are doing things where. And I think, of course, choosing importers, if it's with your objectives, we'll go for the on-trade. And you have a lot of information. You can find, look at the importer, what other producers do they work with? Do they work with the restaurants? You can check on Star Wine Lists if they're on the wine lists and try and find the information there. Of course, if you have a lot of time and resources to go to the markets, I think that's a huge plus. I think that's a big difference between a lot of these producers who have had the time and energy and focus on the markets to come back, make the visits, make the friends, and stand out from the crowd like that.
Those are good advices for sure, because the hardest part seems to be, when you talk to many producers, to find the right importer. So your advice is to go to Sweden, present yourself, and check them up before. That's what you're saying? That's your advice to an Italian producer?
Well, I think, if it had been one simple solution for everybody, you would all be rich, and we would too. So I think, as someone said in these days as well, know what you are, what you can do. Look at, which are the ones that you think you fit into, and what you can manage. And maybe it is a great monopoly producer, importer, and has good connections and monopolies, and you get good listings. Why not? That's easy money, so to say. Whereas if you don't have that option, of course, the on-trade is where you can actually act and do something. Where monopoly is much more difficult if you don't have the connections or knowledge or the how to get in there. So it feels like the on-trade is easier to act upon because you can actually run there and do that, meet people, get out and do stuff. But it's a lot of work, of course.
Well, thank you. We're going to open up for some questions.
Thank you. In Scandinavia, in general, wine scores are still important, and if so, which are the journalists that are most followed?
That's a good question. I think it depends very much on the segment. If you're collectors, yes, I would say it still is. It's not as dominated as was a couple of years ago with Parker Points, etc. It's more fragmented. There are Swedish media, wine media, that do scores that I think people follow. Less scores, but then recommendations. If there's a story in the big media on Fridays, okay, this week we're looking at these 6 wines that were great and recently released. People are like, okay, that sounds good, without really seeing the scores. Journalists, influencers are followed, but not as much scores, I think. What do you think?
No, I think you're right. The most recommendations, both on social media and influencers there, and different segments in the different wine magazines. But the thing is, from my point of view, I write for the main wine magazines in Sweden, is that they mostly want you to write about wines that, of course, are available in the market. So the challenge from my point of view is to tell stories from Italy that are not yet listed, and that is becoming a bigger and bigger challenge. That's one of the reasons why I started my podcast, to be able to tell the stories that no one wanted, but that are normally the most interesting ones. For example, going to Diletta in Lesinia or to Mamoiada and meet Giuseppe Sedilesu, for example, those wines are not listed, but those are really good stories. I don't think scores are super important. I think, for example, when Gambero Rosso comes to Sweden and they have their big event, I think that makes a difference. I think going, as you said, to the market as a consortio or through the Gambero Rosso, etc., and actually talk to people and come out on social media, even though you're not listed on the Swedish market, I think that can make a difference. I give really long answers like an Italian, right?
You're Italian.
Yeah.
I have a question. Are the restaurants that you take as an example imports wine by themselves? They can do it, right?
They can if they get an import license, at least in Sweden. The Danish ones, they usually buy both from importers and direct. It's, as I mentioned, free market. Of these ones, that I show from Sweden, one has an import firm, and some just do to supply their own wishes. If they've been to some place and think, we'll have this wine and nobody takes it, and they have the capacity, they'll have their own import firm, bring it in. So there are no rules against that. A lot of sommeliers, as I mentioned, have their own import licenses.
But otherwise you have to go through an importer. And they're importers, like Krister said, specialized on the Horeca segment only, and they're importers working with both the monopoly and the Horeca, and they're importers working only with the monopoly. So that's why they're all saying find the right importer, because you have to know where you want to be sell your wines, through which channel. All right, I think we made it. We made it through Wine2Wine.
Listen to the
everyone.
Italian Wine
so much.
Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Himalaya FM, and more. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. Until next time, cin cin.